Plum, 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 plum. Hello, everybody. How are you guys this lovely evening on this Tuesday? I'm doing great. I just came back from playing some pool, which was awesome. I feel. Yep. So, tonight we have a very special theme that I would like to tackle. The theme tonight was brought onto us by Ms. Drycan, which is also our moderator for tonight's chat. So any questions you guys have in the chat, she will try to answer you guys as much as she possibly can. So she will be joining us shortly. I think she does not know that I have gone live yet, so just give her a second. If you guys are joining us for our lesson tonight, please make sure to like and share the stream as you guys join the stream. I would like for you guys to just keep on letting people know every so often to please share the stream and like the stream. If you guys help me by just reminding people in the chat every so often, a friendly reminder is always nice from my people that have been learning a lot from me. That'd be great. And that's your best way to give back to me. I don't ask you guys to buy anything. I don't ask you guys to send any money. I don't ask you guys for anything like that. So all I ask is you guys help me out by just showing my artwork to other people, sharing my art, sharing my videos. All those stuff is what I need in order to grow this channel. So if you guys help me like that, I will help you guys with all my knowledge in my brain. So let's start today's stream by sharing the stream. So we have 170 people. Come on, let's share the stream. That is going to be the most important one. And tonight's topic is going to be a really important one that doesn't get taught very often. Tonight's theme is going to be contrasts. What is contrast? Well, contrast is a lot of things, like a lot of things. So it's going to involve focal points. It's going to involve focal points is a bunch of them. And essentially composition. It's going to involve a little bit of that. So to learn what I'm going to teach you, you don't really need to know anything. You don't need to know any perspective. You don't need to know anatomy. You don't need to know any of that. This is more of a principle akin of like color theory or in such, in which it's just necessary for you to learn it because it applies to many different aspects of art. So let's start with a very simple one. Contrasting shapes. Cool. Actually, no. Let's start with just a basic understanding of a contrast. So contrast is just essentially taking something that is going to stand out a lot from the other. In this case, the most drastic example that I can think of is black and white, right? The black stands out just as much from the black as the black stands out from the white. Cool. That is a heavy contrast. So if you had a little bit less, it would not stand out as much. And therefore, it would have less contrast. As you go down more in gradient, you'll start seeing less and less contrast until eventually you see absolutely none. At one point, the contrast between two elements is going to be negligible, and it'll eventually just go into a very base color. So, contrast is how you make something stand out against something else. That is literally the most basic way that I can explain it. So let's talk about a different couple ways that you guys can establish contrast in your things that you do. So one way that is going to be very important, especially with character design, is going to be shape contrasts. So you're going to need to know how a circle, a triangle, a box, and any iteration of these, like spheres, cones, pyramids, cubes, anything like that as well. Understanding how these shapes interact with each other is going to be very important, because something round next to something square is going to give you two very different feelings. One of them is going to give you a feeling of solidity and strength and and then the other one, the soft shape, is going to give you the feeling of softness and bounciness and playfulness and happiness. So, and then you have your spiky shapes, and your spiky shapes provide danger, edgy, caution. That is the three elements that come into contrast whenever you guys are doing your designs. So how does that apply to a drawing? Well, let's say that you want a character that is very strong, but is cute and fluffy. So we would start with a very solid shape for a base for our character. We would round it out to create a softness to him. And then we would just add our features in those same sort of round elements. And then you have a character that just looks more tough. But he still looks a little bit kind. He doesn't look completely like he's got like a villain. But if we take these same features, we go wide, but we make them spiky, like we make them edgy, he's going to start looking very different. He's going to start looking more villainous. He's going to start looking more dangerous, more edgy. Okay? So that simple shape dynamic changes the shape of and the characteristics of the character. If you went completely round, you would have a character that's just really, really cute and like probably chubby, because it would just like enhance the roundness of them. Right? So a person that says like really round would have a lot of round shapes in their body. So somebody that's just naturally round is going to look jolly and happy and soft and squishy. But if you have somebody that's spiky, then you're going to have somebody that's just like, like I don't want to touch you. And then you have everything in between. You can have a person that's just completely boxy, and it'll look more like a bouncer or whatever. Right? The actual like shape, like the actual feeling that you get from each individual one is a characteristic that you have to think about whenever you are drawing your characters. So because let me give you an example. Like if somebody asks you to draw a little character for a Saturday morning cartoon for toddlers, right? And then toddlers need to feel safe, and they need to feel like what they're watching is not going to hurt them. So we have to base everything off circles. Circles will be our main element that we draw with. We can incorporate other little elements that break those cycles to be able to more healthily develop our characters. But we could easily do something with just circles and circular shapes and a lot of round things. By keeping it nice and soft, we can just have a lot of fun drawing, I don't know, a little hamster or whatever. And then just be like, oh, there you go. That's something suitable for kids, something that is not going to scare them, something that's going to be looking nice and squishy and soft. And it could also just be made into like a marketable sticker or plushie or toy or whatever. Cool. That would be one good option. Let's go on to another. Let's draw something even squishier. So we'll make another couple round shapes. In this case, we'll make the head extra big, so we'll make this whole thing the head. We'll still give it baby features by giving it a big forehead. Give it some ears, little muzzle for its little nose. I don't know why I like drawing bears. I just like drawing bears. Let's change the style up a little bit. Still keeping it nice and round. But we're changing it up a little bit just so we can have some differentiation and you can tell that it's not just a style-based thing. It's not necessarily like this style of drawing. It's just a general basis for most design work. So I don't like to teach people in specifics. So I don't like to teach people in just my way of drawing because that's not how it works, right? My goal as a teacher is to make sure that you guys can use your styles, but just have solid foundations to be able to actually use them. So that is my goal. My goal is not to make you draw like me. My goal is to allow you to draw like yourselves, but with an understanding of what you're drawing. That is my goal. So, yeah. So you guys get an understanding of where I'm coming from whenever I'm teaching you guys. Circle, circle, circle. Spheres, spheres, spheres. Let's give him a little heart. And he'll be a robot. Floating in space. With a jetpack. And he obviously needs a helmet. Duh. Unless he would suffocate. And then maybe this is like a space cadet uniform. And this is not going to be a space bunny. No. He's going to be suffocating. That's why he's like out in space. Like, and he's coming to rescue him. or even worse, he's just pushing away from him like, serves you right, punk. Serves you right to mess with the panda gang. Well, okay, so we're going to use this also as another fun element in contrast. So contrast is going to play a big role when it comes down to accenting focal points in something that you draw. We're going to be using my grabby little watercolor set. Here, hold on, let me show it off a little bit. Ooh, look at it. It's so pretty and it has so many colors. And you guys can get your own if you guys feel like actually spending money on something. And it's through the store in my thingy in my links. So I actually enjoy these. Like, I don't normally push any products, but if you guys buy those, I get a bit of like money back. So if you guys want to kick back at me and get something cool, that's kind of like a decent trade-off for me, at least. That's what I think. All right, so let's talk about a little bit about contrast when it comes down to color. So if you ever want to just accentuate an actual drawing, in this case, we have just white lines. right? If I wanted to make this face stand out more, all I have to do is add a little bit of color around it, and all of a sudden, see what happens. Your eye makes that pop out so much more than it did before. Before, it was just a black and white sketch. Now, it just looks like a little baby piece of art. So, that is the power of contrast. Like, contrast alone can essentially make retro art out of anything you do. Like, you can make anything into retro art by just adding like a border of color to a sketch. That is all you would need to really do to create some like 1960s like blah 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 retro art. You don't need to do much. Contrast is a very powerful tool. Like I said, it's not necessarily just something that is completely opposing it. It can also mean that you can have shapes that contrast with each other, and then you can also have color that contrasts with non-color, and then you can also have like complete, oh my god, here, hold on, oh my god, I totally forgot that. Okay, so another aspect of contrast is line work. Oh my god, but this one's going to be awesome, because I never ever hear people talk about this shit. So when I discovered by myself that there's a gradient scale between sketchy lines and clean lines and everything in between, there's a gradient scale for this shit, right? So you can go from like super sketchy to almost super clean and everywhere in between. So I gave this sort of line work scale a name, and I called it the creepy to cute scale. So whenever you're drawing anything with line work, you have to dictate how creepy or how cute you want something to look. And that is decided a lot by the type of line work you end up with your illustration. Let me give you guys an example. An example that's actually going to demonstrate this really, really easy. We're going to draw two of the same exact characters. We're going to have character A and character B. Character A is going to be on the creepy side of the scale, and we're going to use a lot of sketchy lines for his features and his outings and his fur and everything in between. So we're going to give him some ears, right? So this guy is going to get really, really sketchy lines. So let's give him some eyes. Can you guys already tell? Like, just simply by adding sketchy lines to your eyes, that alone is already like a creepy look, right? So if we go with that opposing act and we draw something really clean, there is going to be a very big difference when it comes down to how you perceive a character, right? So somebody that has really sketchy lines, even in like their details, like their eyeballs and stuff like that, their nose, like their muzzles, we're drawing like a little panda or whatever. So anything that has a lot of sketchy lines is going to look like distress, like anxiety, as opposed to something that doesn't have that type of like chaos going on, can come out looking like it's calm, like it's in peace, like it's soft and fluffy and happy. So more cute. if you apply that to the rest of the actual like type of art, like you add sketchy lines to the fur and you start seeing a very drastic difference between that and maybe even still adding fur, but making it nice and clean instead of adding a bunch of unnecessary lines. Keeps it in this gradient scale. So when you discover that, it adds a whole other element, a whole other side to your art. Like, oh my God, because then you can have clean line work with messy coloring, giving you like a really cool in between, or you could have like mixed parts for these, right? So imagine you like combine these. So you want something that has like a really cool, like sketchy look to their fur, but you want something that's still gonna look really cute inside. So you start combining these elements. You go cute in one part, you go creepy in the other, and you just pick and choose what elements are most important to you to get that character out. Okay, so you can have combinations of cute and creepy, and then everything in between. You can keep on adding lines until you feel like you've hit that right, perfect mark. Thank God if you're doing this digital, you could always use the undo button, right? But if you're not and you're doing it with pen like I am right now, it's just all about pressure. So in order to draw with ballpoint pen, right, and which is, in this case, I'm drawing with ballpoint pen. If you guys are drawing with pencil and stuff like that, you guys can always erase. But if you're drawing like me and you're drawing with ballpoint pen, getting your penmanship down is going to be very important. How do you do that with ballpoint pen without like getting the smudges and all that shit, right? So let me explain to you guys how to draw quickly with ballpoint pen so you guys can follow along and maybe practice on your own as well. So first things first, get used to the actual pen. If you are used to grabbing something that's thicker like I am, I like grabbing like markers and like big thick Sharpies to draw with. So I have a thicker like wide grasp for my stuff. That's why I use this little grip. If you are comfy with just using the pen by itself, look at that, it's almost done. Then, just draw with the pen by itself. It's perfectly fine. I don't just do this. I just don't like using it like this for hours and hours and hours because it just actually like just hurts my fingers. I put too much pressure down. So I just don't do that. So I use this. Okay, so completely lost track of what we were talking about. I was so excited too. Well, anyways, you can combine like line work, you can do like elements like this all the time. So, line work, like pen exercises. Okay, so the first things that you guys should practice is going in circles and drawing little circles, like trying to draw circles in general. Trying to be able to draw and connect circles to circles and trying to like touch the edges. At one point, you will be able to just do them indefinitely connected to each other. Getting this exercise down is just good for dexterity's sake. And two, it's good for precision because you need to be very precise when you're drawing with something like a pen. You have to be able to be putting your lines down in the right place once because you only get one time. So you have to be at a higher level of decision making as you would with a pencil. Now, I'm not saying that you can't really hide, mistakes. You can hide mistakes with a pen almost as easily with a pencil. And I'm going to show you guys that in a little bit. And that is going to be how you use contrast in sketching. And I'll show you guys that in a bit. But a simple exercise that you guys can do on a napkin, even on your own body. You can like literally sit down and just draw circles connecting to circles on yourself if you don't have anything else to draw on, right? Getting that precision down is very important. So if you actually are serious about your career and you want to actually progress and get better at that, then use your time accordingly. Use any free time you have. Use it to do these exercises. I know like the saying says that you have to spend 10,000 hours doing something in order to be a master at it, right? That is the saying. And I calculated how many hours I've put in. It's a lot more than 10,000. Let me put it like that. I completed my 10,000 hours by the time I was 25. So I'm 40. And I just kept drawing more and more and more and more and more. So I have probably accomplished considerably past this, which means that my practice alone, what I have done just to practice, has easily surpassed the 10,000 mark, right? Easily. Not counting for anything that I've done professionally or anything that took time to do projects, whatever. Just my practice alone is easily over the 20,000 hour mark. And what has that given me? It's given me the ability to draw absolutely anything I want with a pen. I have the ability to draw incredibly thin lines that you can barely see. I have the ability to go over those lines exactly over and 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 over if I need to, until I get the desired amount of depth, and my hand just does not waver, right? When you're doing things in a curve, it's the same thing. You can build up your lines by progressively using that and just adding little by little. You sketch with ballpoint pen by drawing really thin sketch lines. And then when you start adding thicker lines, those lines disappear because the contrast of the black calls your eye out to that element. And you forget that there's initial lines in there once you start adding darker lines that are more important to your eye. You eventually just don't see those lines anymore. Let's see. Some like action scene, like no. Maybe he's like a giant dude. He's gonna chase people like no. Rah, I am a doll. I am controlled by the puppet master. Ha 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 ha. Play for me, my darlings. I am the puppet master. See, it's sharp, pointy elements. Sharp, pointy elements for villains. Right? Immediately reads as a villain. Adding sketchy lines makes him a darker villain, creepier villain. Adding sketchy lines to, let's say, his hands and stuff like that makes him an even creepier villain. And stuff like that. Like, you can play around with concepts like shape dynamics, line dynamics, color dynamics, and actually enhance your drawings a lot by just adding these little elements and thoughts into your drawings. So let's just draw a couple things, and I'll explain to you guys how I'm creating contrast within those elements. And then we'll do some faces, we'll do some bodies, we'll do some environments, we'll do some things with color, and then we'll add some contrast to everything alone by just adding watercolor to it so you guys can see how I make things stand out and my decision making when it comes down to drawing more complex things and how to like sketch out cool things like, I don't know, animals and stuff like that. Dinosaurs, or even just making your sketches look just a little bit better by just adding a tiny bit of color, which I think I am quite good at. Ta-da! But you can get a lot of really cool results by just adding a single color to your drawings. So being able to know how to use that power within your skill set is going to be something that is very important to understand. So let's do some examples and just drawings of random stuff that has like some sort of contrast to them. And everything has contrast. Everything has like a thick to thin side, or fat and skinny side, or a round and flat side. You know, everything has that, including heads, including bodies, including hands, including feet, legs, everything. So that is contrast. But you need to, that like a lot of people use that like principles like squash and stretch, or like curves and straights, right? Like all these principles that you're like, they talk about contrapposta, like the act of like having your collarbone, your hips, and everything like intertwine and change directions and shit like that. All those rules are just contrast. That's all you're doing. You're contrasting a shape. You're contrasting this line. You're contrasting your pose, right? It's something that is going opposite of the other. Change in such a broad term. And that's just because nobody really segments it into different things. Like, it's just not something that's taught much outside of like design, and in graphic design, they teach this a lot more. So if you go into graphic design, you probably have a better understanding of this than a person that went for animation. But in animation, they teach you like squash and stretch, and they teach you like flats versus thin, and they teach you like one arm should have one side that's like straight and one side that's flat and one side that's curved. That's not necessarily the case for anything. But these elements just enhance the natural poses, the natural things that we see. So it makes something look more visually appealing. So it's not something that just naturally happens. It's something that we're adding on top of whatever we design in order to make it more visually appealing. So yes, these are principles that you should take into consideration, because it does make your artwork look much better, and it makes you understand a couple things a lot easier. But actual human, like realistic posing is not that drastic. Realistic posing is a very subtle. Like if you went and you drew more like real poses, you would have very incredibly subtle turns of your hips, and literally like you would have almost no differentiation from like a flat pose, except for just having your weight distributed differently a tiny bit. But that's boring. Like, normal poses are pretty boring. Like, nobody really wants to just draw a character that's just looking at their phone or whatever, just standing still. Like, that is what most humans look like in the wild. Like, be it in like a table, they have like their head down and they have their phone, right? Like, this is the average human being whenever they are in public, right? That's boring. So whenever we do stuff like that, we like enhance it by twisting their heads a little bit, you know, and like resting their hands, creating like angles versus curves, enhancing the poses, maybe changing like the angle to be looking at from the top, stuff like that. Like little tiny changes that you do visually enhance the drawing and the pose considerably. So this is something that takes into consideration all these little rules. And then this is something that you would see in real life. So the difference is, as artists, we get to do all of it. We get to decide what parts of reality we take into account and what parts we choose to make up. That is awesome because it's just literally like a superpower. Being able to actually draw people doing anything you want is absolutely bonkers. Like once you get to the point where you are actually comfortable drawing like a base body system, in this case, this is mine. This is how I draw my bodies. Sharing all my tips and tricks with you guys. So let me explain to you guys how and like what I'm thinking about whenever I'm drawing my characters like this. So the first thing that I'm thinking about is that my back and my hips are going to create a little bit of a crease, right? They're going to have a contour going inside my rib cage back out to my hips, giving my body a little bit of a V shape. Then from here, I know that my chest up here is round and that this crevice, that is where my abs are going to be. So it's going to change direction if I am fit. If I'm fat, I would have a belly right here. If I have like love handles, my love handles would connect from outside of my rib cage down to where my hip bones are. And then this is where my legs would come out. My legs come out of my hip holes. That's like literally the only thing that I can possibly call them. Your little hip holes that are literally, this is gonna blow anyone that does not know how to draw legs right now. You guys pay attention, grab a sketchbook right now, grab it and hit that like button so this becomes like a clip, okay? If you wanna learn how to draw legs, hit that little like button like crazy. TikTok takes into consideration the likes and then saves the next minute or so. So click it. Okay, cool. So that should be enough to get this going. Now, if you want to draw legs better, all you got to do is learn how to draw the hips. If you want to draw the hips, it's super easy. It's this shape, right? What is this shape? Well, this is going to replicate your actual hip bones. You just have to take a cylinder and then curve those sides in. That's it. That's all you need to do for legs. Because that from there, anything you draw, be it a straight line, or be it like a nice sexy leg with muscles and blah, 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 and lingerie or whatever, right? Like be it anything that you draw from those holes is going to look like a leg. Now, you just have to draw it in the general shape of a leg. You can't just draw absolutely anything and expect it to look like a leg. But you need to have something that has two parts and it has a cylindrical shape. After you have that, you have your foot and you have a leg. And you're always going to know where it comes from. So as long as you can draw that shape in space, you will know how to draw legs. You might not know how to draw legs really cool yet. Like you won't be able to draw like all the muscles until you actually take the time to learn anatomy, but you will at least know that that's where real anatomy comes from. And then therefore you won't have to relearn how to draw that part. You'll just learn how to enhance that part, right? Like if you don't know how to draw the calf bones, you can just draw cylinders like this. But once you understand how to draw like the bottom part, you can start adding the muscles and the crevices and the hairs or whatever more type of like detail you want to add, you can always add it on top of your actual mannequin at any given point. That is the beauty of this. That is the absolute wonder of learning the way that I teach. It's like you can learn by just drawing this shape. That's your hips. That's literally the shape for the hips. It's like, it's so easy. And then from here, just draw your legs coming out of there. 2 sections for your legs. They overlap. If you really, really care about like drawing something that's a little bit more accurate, it's 2 teardrop shapes. Your thigh and your kneecap as the top one. Your bottom is going to be your shin bone and the front, and then your thigh muscle behind it. Wrapping behind your shin bone around the back, not in the middle. It's not a cone. No, you have your knee and your, like, this is your kneecap and your thigh as one big shape. You have your shin bone coming down from your kneecap to your foot. And then you have your calf behind your calf, your muscle, behind your bone that does not shift or move. This is always going to be at the front. So whatever thickness you want for your calf is just a shape behind that bone. And it connects to the top of the thigh, giving you a perfect leg every time. Essentially, it's that. And then when you rotate it in space, oh, guess what? It still works. Oh, it still works. Oh, wow. Look at that. Oh, simplicity. Right? When you think about it easier, draw your thigh, draw a stick coming down your kneecap, a stick into your foot, and then wrap your muscle for your calf behind it, connecting and overlapping with your thigh underneath. You'll never wonder how to draw the calf again. Another way that you can do it, let me explain another easy way to draw the leg. So if you're drawing, again, your thigh, and your thigh comes out of your hip bone, right? So your thighs, we'll draw 2 of them. Then, again, just draw a cylinder coming down. A cylinder from your kneecap. A cylinder. Have that be like all the way, that's going to be your ankle. Just consider that your ankle. Like that is your ankle, and then your foot comes from in the front of that. Okay? And then draw and this cylinder, just start drawing your perspective lines, right? You know how to divide a cylinder in perspective, right? You understand how to do that. That should be something that we practice all the time. Now, I want you to expand that, but only towards the back. So only towards the back. You're going to expand that, and then you're going to connect it at the top. And that is another way that you can draw the backside of your calf whenever you're drawing. So draw your cylinder, draw your foot, and then follow these cylinders and expand the parts where you want to draw your calf. And that's how you draw the calf muscle really easy. Okay, so let's talk a little bit more about the actual body system, and we'll talk a little bit about contrast and posing as well. Yeah, I think that'll be helpful. And then we'll go into environments a little bit. And fingers too? What? Oh, hold on. So, I don't know if Ms. Drycan is in our... Can you teach how to draw hands? I guess I can. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about backgrounds. I think that's going to be important too. So let's talk a little bit about how we create a scene by creating different contrasts and creating focal points. Because essentially, what you are talking about whenever you're doing contrast is creating a focal point. So essentially, focal points are going to be what you are doing with this. Now, with most of it, contrasting shapes, that is not necessarily a focal point thing. That is a flow thing. So things like squash and stretch and curved and thin and flat to curved and all those different rules are more of a flow of your drawing, not necessarily a visual thing when it comes down to like seeing or making a focal point, which gets kind of confusing. But again, contrast in itself is a very vague term that nobody ever teaches. So it's kind of like uncharted territory, at least for me, because I never got taught that. And in my self-studies, I've just come up with what I'm teaching you guys now. All right, so yeah, let's talk a little bit about how you can use contrast and focal points. So let's put focal points. In like anything like, I don't know, a piece of art in general. So we'll do one landscape. So if we are going to be doing a landscape and we wanted to create the parts, first of all, to be able to focus on, we need to create a foreground, a middle ground, and a background. So that's the first thing that you have to think about whenever you're drawing anything on an imaginary background. So the middle ground is going to be the center stage normally for the piece of art. Whatever you're going to be focusing on tends to be in the middle ground. In this case, let's draw a little creature, smiling, some teeth. And he's just going to be chilling here. Okay, so that is going to be our middle ground. Now, our middle ground is normally wherever the character or the main focus of our art is going to be. This already is creating a focal point by just having the actual character there. So in order to not make the character lose any of the focus for the art, you need to make sure that he keeps on standing out regardless of what you add. So whenever you are adding things like plants and background elements and lighting and shadows and highlights and textures and stuff like that, if you add too much of that around your character and not in him, you're going to just muddy up everything and it's just going to look too busy. It's much, much more preferred to have the actual elements that have texture be around him, creating like an ombre look to him. And we're going to do this with a couple different ways of going about it. One aspect is going to be your foreground. And a foreground element tends to be in a darker color. So in this case, let's make like a tree. I'm going to add some branches. The fact that it's outside of this frame makes it look like the camera is looking through it. Add some blades of grass. So this already looks like it's in the foreground because it's not visible completely in the actual camera. And it looks like it's dark, so it looks like maybe it's out of focus, maybe it's not getting enough light from this midsection, and therefore it's in shadows, right? So any little details that you add are just going to add to the effect of it looking like it's in the foreground. Now, in order to create the opposite effect and make something look like it's in the background, we need to make it look much smaller. Instead of making it look bigger than what the camera can see, You need to be able to see the totality of it and even see it a little smaller because it's so far in the back whenever you are looking at it. So things like a mountain or like the hillside, like the horizon, right? And then just having little things like mountains. And these will be in light color. Like the background elements will be more faded. They'll be more washed out. You'll have like little layers of white, and we can replicate that with color. Let me see, where's my color? Here's my color. So we'll add a little bit of color to just complement this. Where's the blue? There it is. Okay. So, in order to make the background elements just look like they're fading into more, a lot of people use white. So they use white in order to create like a cloud-like effect that just makes it look hazy, and it makes it look like it's like vanishing into the distance because you can't see it as detailed anymore. So the things that are closer into the camera will have a lot more detail. Something in the foreground, you'll be able to like see like little like tree branches and stuff like that. Maybe even some texture in the actual tree. Maybe like some of the leaves and stuff like that because they're so close to the camera. Now, as you get farther, you should see less detail, but you should see more, right? You should see more of the landscape, like clouds and the sky and the trees and the sun and all that nonsense. But all of it is going to have less detail because it's so far away. You're not going to be able to see the texture in the rocks. You won't be able to see, like if there's trees, you would see silhouettes of the trees or like blobs of trees. Right? Just because that is how something like that is so detailed would look in the distance. You would not ever be able to see a branch or like a little tree stump from that distance. It would be impossible unless you have like the eyes of a freaking eagle, right? And it's not normally something that is going to be needed when it comes down to illustrating because it's just not needed because the focal point is this guy. The main purpose of the art is this guy. So it's not the trees, it's not the elements. These are just to establish a scene. This guy is the main focus. So this guy is going to get the most vibrant colors. So if we went with something that is going to stand out from this blue that we chose, then we would choose something like a yellow or a red or like a bright, bright red. Let's try like an orangey red. See if that color looks good. Yeah, that stands out a lot. So by adding a little bit of color to him, now he just stands out even more. Like he just is literally the first thing you see and the last thing you can actually look at whenever you're looking at this drawing. And it's literally just a blob of color. But it looks like an entire scene because it has an element in the foreground, a middle ground, and the background. And you can even kind of feel like there's a story to it and stuff like that if you start adding things like lighting and little textures. Right? You can have like a little quote, whatever you want. Like at this point, it literally took 2 seconds to draw this. You could probably make multiple versions of this. Draw like a tree branch in the front. Any sort of like foliage on it. And then draw a monster in the middle. And then draw mountains in the back of different varieties. And then just like that, you have like an entire line of like little monsters taking pictures inside of something. I don't know. Just super, super simple concepts with a little bit of contrast can become an entire like line of things. Like you have no idea how much power you guys have as designers. You guys just need to understand these concepts so you guys can use them in your own particular styles. If you guys understand and learn how to use contrast, especially with colors and stuff like that. Here, hold on. For example, in that one, maybe I want this one to be like in the daytime. So, because the blue will stand out more against the daytime, as opposed to this one that would stand out more against the nighttime. So just by doing that, I created another way to make this guy into my focal point. And he just stands out like a sore thumb from that. But let me show you what happens if you take the same concept and you don't take that into consideration. Let's say that we just drew this guy and we wanted this guy to be in a sunset. All of a sudden, everything just looks muddy. Everything just looks bad. Like, it just does not look like he stands out. It just looks like he's just, now, right? So in order to be able to change that, you need to learn a little bit of color theory. And in this case, it would have to be changing the monster to a more blue tint, maybe, would make him stand out again. But then it's not as vibrant, it's not as good. So having to not, if you think about it from the get-go, it's going to be a lot easier for you and more, it's going to end up being better. If you think of your colors and how things are going to stand out and contrast from the get-go, which is why people should do a bunch of thumbnails. In case you're thinking about doing something with, like, I don't know, let's say like a pinup girl, right? Let's say we have like some sort of drawing of a girl and you wanted to like give this a little bit of a cool spin. Well, one thing that I would suggest, you just either just color a certain part of her, let's say the hair, and any part that's not touching the hair, just alternate the color in between. So let's say that right here, she has a shirt, and we draw the shirt in a certain color so that the arms stand out from that. But now in this case, the arm and the background kind of blend in together. If I want them to stand out individually, I would just add a little bit of lines of that same color to break up those shapes. And then now it looks like there's separation between them. Same thing with the back. And just like that, I created something that looks more akin of like a nice composition by just creating little points of contrast. You can do that with most of your drawings. Let's say we draw another pinup. Let's draw one from the front this time. Okay, so we have this lady. And again, we just want to create some contrast to make sure that our sketch looks a little bit good. But now I'm not going to go and color her hair. I want to create her hair to look white. Her hair is going to be white like Daenerys, whatever. And we need this to look white, like super ultra white. So I'm just going to color the outside, create contrast there. Right? So now the hair looks white, but now the skin is going to have to get a little bit of a tint in the shape of a shadow or something in order for that hair to stand out as incredibly white. Or you could just give like a light hint of color to her as well. Just make sure that the color in the background is darker. So now your character has white hair. Woo! In a simple sketch. Woo! I like to use my highlighters a lot. Highlighters are like something that is like very dear to me. Like I've been using highlighters for a very long time. And the reason that I love it is because they were cheap and they were free. So it didn't matter if I ever didn't have any money, I'll be able to create my art regardless because my art does not cost a lot of money to get done. Like in order to create or teach, all I require is literally just a piece of paper and pens. Give me something, I will color with a ketchup packet if I need to. Like I don't need anything expensive to color. That is just something that like is never absolutely needed. Like I've literally colored with coffee grains instead of like having to pay for markers. All right, so let's try a different color. Let's try this one. Let's see. In this case, let's color her hair. And the next thing that needs a little bit of separation is maybe her clothing from her head. And then since this area is really, really white on white, I'm going to add a little bit of color just to break up that part so that her face stands out more. Now her eye is another part that's white on white. So I am just going to add a little bit of tint to the top, a little bit of tint to the bottom, and it's going to make it stand out. Now, the same thing is going to happen with the nose. I'm going to add a little bit of hint of color just so that it gives me a little bit more depth. I can do that with the cheeks as well and create even more depth. Literally by just adding blobs of color, I can be like, now it has rosy cheeks. Now it has nice. Now it has a nice little rosy nose. Now my face stands out more. And just little by little, I can add like more things like shadows and stuff like that. But that's just a different thing for a different day. Dazed and confused. That's like, what? Anyways, I haven't been really able to like see the chat. Hopefully you guys are doing well. If you guys are, or you guys are learning anything tonight, please do me a favor. Do me a solid. Go like and share the stream. That is all I ever ask of you guys. Boom, boom, boom. Please do. Go share my stream because it's cool. Oh man, I've been like decorating my whole like studio space and it's starting to look really nice. Oh, it looks so good. Oh yeah, like, if you guys want to go support me and want to buy something cool for yourselves, I have 4 books out. I have 4 books. Some of them are Hot Sexy Ladies, a book of entirely of pinup art. Pa, pa, pa. Oh, sexy ladies. Or you can go check out my Coffee Break Doodles, which is a collection of all the artwork that I used to do for my own journaling. And that is my sketchbook, my art sketchbook. That is literally Coffee Break Doodles, CBD. So that one is just my first ever sketchbook I ever released, right? So that one is literally my own personal like hurrah, like I did it. I'm an artist. I made something of myself. So if you guys want to get that one, that is there as well for you guys to purchase. And then I have 2 volumes of Art Block. Art Block are 100-page books of doodles from streams that we've done. So the first one and the second one, there's a big difference in like teaching materials, right? Like the first one that we did is literally just sketches from streams that we did. And I was not necessarily like teaching as much. So it's like a bunch of random doodles from like Disney movies and stuff like that. Same as number 2, like it has a little bit more teaching, but number 3 is going to be it's going to be like 3 is going to be either the big book of little lessons or it's going to be the big book of derpy animals. So it's either going to be like big derpy animals, 100 pages of derpy animals, which is going to be awesome. Or it's going to be 100 pages of like anatomy lessons and like bunch of like little lessons like that, which will be a precursor as well to my how to draw book later on whenever I actually get a chance to finish it. So one of these 2 is going to be next. One of them will be volume 3, and then the other one will be volume 4. So they'll be out relatively soon, one after the other. It's just a matter of formatting and getting them out and like ready for print as well. So they will be released as ebooks so that the ebook can facilitate and like fund the printed version editing and like time that it takes to be able to do that. So you guys will essentially be able to help me fund without doing a Kickstarter and shit like that. I'll be able to sell these as ebooks and then use that money from the ebooks to be able to fund printing. And then we can do awesome prints of them as well. Cool. What are the names of those watercolor markers? It's not a watercolor marker. It's just like a little watercolor set. These are from Grabby. So Grabby is the company, I guess, that sent me them. And it's the companies whose watercolors are in my little store in my links. So, yeah, you can just get it from there if you want. If you get it from there, I get something back. So let me explain to you guys how we use contrast within our line work, right? And how we use thick to thin lines in order to create really cool art. So thick to thin lines come into play whenever you want to create something or replicate a detail or depth or shadows within your shape to create depth within just your line work without having to draw anything additional. So thick to thin lines come into play a lot when it comes down to styling, because it's essentially a good, fun way to replicate light sources without really needing to add any detail. So if you wanted to replicate an eyelid and you wanted to replicate that there's a little bit of a heavier eyelid, you would go and create a thick to thin line above the eye, therefore creating the illusion of there being a heavier eyelid. Now, this is going to be something that has a lot of thick to thin lines, but without them, it doesn't look quite as impressive. Right? Without the thick to thin contrast to this, even an eye looks kind of boring. So the moment that we start adding even a thicker eyelid or a thicker line on top, just by adding that thicker line, your eye looks a million times better. Now, if you start adding more contrast, like a thicker line, overlapping shapes, and slightly thick to thin lines, you end up getting a lot deeper of a drawing than you do by just having your lines there. So having that contrast in your lines is very important. So sometimes it's to add style. Sometimes it's to add depth. If you want to create depth with your line work, it's very easy. Practice it with a sphere, like most of the things that we're going to ever do. You're going to practice your depth with your thick to thin with just your sphere. When you have a sphere, you're going to dictate a light source. Let's say the light source is right here and it's going to be shining this way. Cool. Now, in order to create depth and make it look like this light is hitting this with just your line work, you would thicken the lines in the back. By doing that, I'm making this look like it has like some sort of weight or measure or volume just by adding that thicker line. So when we start combining this element within our art, you can have, for example, let's say a nose. You have your light source, right? Your light source is hitting in this direction. So now every part that's not getting hit by the light, we're going to make it a little bit thicker. Any part that is getting hit by the light is going to be thinner. And just by adding that depth, you have a lot more weight to your art. It looks a lot more in depth. It seems like it's actually there. Now, when you start adding shadows and lights and highlights and stuff, that's when you really start seeing everything pop out. Okay. But you can get a lot of depth before you even get to this point by just adding your line work. Now, it's not just about adding thick to thins everywhere. You need to make sure that it's based on your actual light source. Let's say, again, we're going to have like, I don't know, some legs. We talked about legs a little bit. So let's draw some legs. Okay. So we have two legs. So let's say that the light source for it, and we can look at them from the back to make it even more challenging. Make it have a butt. Okay, so now that we have our booty, we have our legs looking from behind. And we have our light source, which will be right over here. Bam. So if we wanted to ink this in a more traditional way, we would consider that this top edge right here is all being hit by the light. So therefore, that's not going to be really darkened. Now, anything that's not getting hit by the light, therefore would create a shadow, would be all these lines inside. So I would darken a bunch of these lines just to create an illusion of weight. Just by doing that, I don't even need to really add shadows anymore. I just already have a bunch of weight to my art, which is a very big component to creating depth. That combined with my overlapping lines and how like I overlap my shapes and create roundness with my lines is going to be another component that adds a lot of depth to my designs in general. Learning how to overlap shapes and turn them and twist them and make them work with each other is going to be something that is going to be a challenge that you're going to have to get used to. Being able to turn something from round to flat is something that might be a challenge to people if you aren't very familiar with how to draw shapes. Things just combining more intricate elements like boxes into spheres is going to be a very important component because this is essentially what your face is. Right? That is what your face is. Your face is a round object combining it with a box, which is your jaw. That is what's going on with your actual face. So if you can manage to understand these two shapes and learn how to combine them, you'll never have an issue drawing a face anymore. Circle, box. Mask. Essentially, it just all falls into place, creating your actual anatomy, right? So if you learn how to space that out properly, you can create like your actual like realistic anatomy, cartoony anatomy. You can start applying those concepts to like super hyper exaggerated ones. You know, you can have a lot of fun having knowledge now that you can use to exaggerate and be able to draw cool, awesome, like things that maybe you never would have been able to draw if you didn't understand how to place elements in perspective or elements within your anatomy. And that's how you end up pushing things like and doing caricatures and stuff like that, is combining those elements into more super crazy exaggerated ways and taking all those features and contrasting shapes that we learned, combining those with anatomy, and then just exaggerating the parts that are important to exaggerate. But all those different contrast like lessons combined are what essentially allow you to create your own style, create your own way of flow for your characters, and you're going to just have a natural way of going about it once you learn how to manipulate your basic shapes. Once you learn how to do your basic shapes and your basic rib cages and your basic hip bones and literally just the basic way that your body connects to each other, right? If you learn that basic concept of those things, where things pivot from, how things move, how things rotate, how things are limited by other body parts, right? How things rotate, move in space. And all these is just basic shapes going in a bunch of different directions. So there's nothing difficult about this except learning how these things connect and how to manipulate these things in space. That is hard. Yes, that is going to be hard, and it's going to take a while until you actually go back and just focus on your foundations for a little bit. Instead of making things to try to make them look pretty, try to make them look accurate for an entire sketchbook. Just spend an entire sketchbook just focusing on placing things in the right place, right? And if you don't know where the right place is, then doing your research and then actually trying to do things based on reference and then making them make sense to yourself. You don't have to draw the same way that everybody else draws. I don't draw the same way that anyone else draws. Literally, like the way that I'm teaching you guys, I don't see that way being taught at all. Like, I don't see anyone else trying to be like, oh, draw like this, draw like that. Like, no. Like, I've taken most of the instructional classes from most of the, like, most known teachers and stuff like that. Like, I just don't learn the same way that they teach. So it's not something, like, I had to come up with ways that made sense to me, not in a way that made sense to other people, because obviously my brain does not work like other people's. So instead of trying to be a fish trying to climb a tree, I decided to make myself an ocean. So I made my own little systems that seem to work relatively well. So, as we get close to the end of this page, I hope you guys actually learned a little bit more about contrast and like rules of like shape dynamics and how like it actually is very important to understand as you go about just learning how to draw and create. You know, like being able to understand how to make something pop out, be it a simple sketch like these sketches of legs, or making it stand out by coloring the item itself, is going to be a choice that you get to choose. Maybe you like this more than that. I don't know. It's up to you. But both of them are just contrasts. And you can use contrast in a bunch of different ways. You guys can use them to make your character stand out. You can make things like fade into each other if you want them to stand out less. You can use it with your characters and your sketches by just simply coloring very basic key points of them, therefore making it stand out in a really cool fashion. So you don't need to put a lot of detail in your art if you know where to actually add the focal points within your designs. Right? So that is why a person that is a cartoonist can sometimes outdraw somebody that is a realism person, because it's just a matter of making sure you know where you're drawing, not necessarily the amount of detail that you draw. It's not always about the amount of detail. It's more about the precision of the detail. Your foundations, and I'm going to repeat this until the cows come home. Your foundations are essentially your knowledge about how to place things in the proper space and with proper spacing, with proper textures and understanding and skill work and stuff like that. That is your foundations. How you make it look pretty, the choice of lines, the choice of sketchiness to cute, all that stuff is going to be your choice of style. That is not your foundations. Your foundations is how you make it look proper. Your style is how you make things look pretty. Okay? How you make things look unique. How you bend your rules in order to create that is going to be based on your knowledge. How much you understand the topic is going to be relevant to how much you can actually draw that or create anything with that. You're not going to be able to draw from your imagination something you don't understand. But if you understand it, you can draw anything you want from that theme. Like literally understanding and knowledge is like the basic premise of just unlocking everything in your brain. Like you want to create stories of an imaginable grandeur. Well, you need to unlock your brain to be able to do that. And by being able to visualize all your shapes and the proper lines and proper perspective, which will take a while. It will take a while. And you're going to have to go back and draw circles and ovals and all that shit and make sure that you actually understand them. But at the end of it, at the end of that little journey, you're going to do your little side quest in your journey. You're going to find that you are going to be so grateful for doing so. Because I've been doing this for 20 years. And the moment that I've always struggled with a lot of things, like when it comes down to anatomy and perspective, up until the last 4 or 5 years, I can't even imagine going back and not understanding this. I know that I need to constantly, because it helps to understand my thought processes as I learn how to do these, so that I can walk you guys through all those steps without all the unnecessary years of just doing the same bullshit. So me going and struggling with all this is just going to benefit all of you guys, because I don't want you guys to struggle. So all the lessons that I give you, they're years and years and even almost 2 decades worth of self-taughtness. So, hopefully you guys get something out of this. Hopefully you do. If you don't, I'm sorry. There is a lot of good teachers out there. If it's not something that you learned or you picked up easily from me, there's a bunch of different people that teach very differently that might be able to help you out. I am not a person that is looking to make a buck out of you guys. So I just want you guys to grow and learn and get better at what you like to do so that you can actually go out and make a living with what you guys want to do. Right? Like that is essentially my dream. My dream is that all of you guys go out and you guys succeed in what you guys want to create. So free lessons until everyone succeeds or until I can't pay my bills. But you guys have been buying my books. You guys have been doing that. So that's perfect. I'm not in any way, shape, or form in need of money. So please don't think that I'm doing that. I'm actually just really grateful that I'm able to do this essentially for a living now. And it's only going to get better and better and better. We're almost at 200,000 followers, right? So we grew that quick. That was a month. It took a month to get almost 80,000 followers with me trying. This is the first time that I actually sit down and try. So this is not going to stop here. No, I'm going to I want to be the internet's best teacher. Yeah, I'm going to be the face of teaching people how to draw in this day and age. How about that? That's a good goal. I think I'm going to make that a goal. And just so you guys know a little bit about me, I set really high goals for myself, and I tend to meet them because I obsess over things. So the last goal that I chose for myself was to become a good pool player. So in 1 year, from not really knowing anything about pool, in 1 year, I got to the world's championship in pool. In a single year, I got championship ring. I got a championship patch for being an MVP. I got a championship token for going to Worlds. Yeah, so I am a very obsessive human being. Which means that when I focus on something, I don't stop until I get it. So that is going to be what we aim for in the next coming years. I'm not aiming for months. I'm talking about in a year or two, I will be known as one of the best teachers online. I will have my book out. My how to draw book is going to be fucking cool. I admit it. I'm excited to be able to finish that. It's How to Draw Everything, Volume 1. Wow. I'm excited for the future, man. So, while I have you guys here, I'm going to be a little bit vulnerable here. I am incredibly happy that that I've had the opportunity to be able to teach to so many people. It's really nice it's so nice to be able to do what I want to do. Oh, it just makes me so happy. Anyways, we are close to our end of our sketchbook for today. Hope you guys had a wonderful time. I know I did. Hope you guys learned a lot. So let's recap a little bit of what we learned, and then we'll send you guys off with a nice message so you guys have a nice morning or a nice evening, whatever you guys are in. So we talked about contrast. Today's lesson was all about different types of contrast that we find all over our art. So be it just the actual concept of contrast, which just indicates the differentiation between something standing out from each other, aka creating focal points, or just creating contrast in the shape of form dynamics, shape dynamics, or color. And we started combining those elements and stuff like that. Then I also talked to you guys about your line work and how you can use your line work to be able to create elements of texture and creepiness and storytelling within just your line work alone by using the sketchiness guideline from cute to creepy. Then we have exercises that you guys can do to be able to improve your dexterity. If you guys want to get better at penmanship, draw circles connecting, and every single time that you guys don't connect or it goes over, go over it again until you actually hit those right marks. Okay. You can do that with boxes as well. I don't like doing boxes. Boxes are boring. Honestly, like it does not teach you any dexterity when it comes down to boxes. Like I just don't like drawing boxes. And I don't like drawing triangles either. Like my dexterity, I like the flow of spheres. And I could honestly just draw an entire body system just by drawing spheres. But it's just my preferred way of drawing because I see that shape and I see the front and the back and the elements and the depth really, really easy. So everything that I draw is essentially a sphere or a beanbag in hiding, right? Down to the fingers. Everything is a beanbag. Everything's a beanbag. Everything's a beanbag down to your feet. Everything's a beanbag. Your fingers too. So that is going to be a big basic premise of my book as well. Essentially how to learn how to draw absolutely everything just based on understanding how to draw this basic shape. And this basic shape is just two different spheres combined. Right? Once you understand that, and you combine that into that can turn into a rib cage, that can turn into a face, that can turn into a body, that can turn into an animal, that can turn into anything. So it's just going to be a very basic concept and a very easy way to explain to people how to visualize your elements as the same basic thing and using your imagination past your basic premise of, like form to be able to develop your art from simpler shapes. But anyways, I hope you guys had a wonderful time. I did. I enjoyed a lot teaching you guys. I love doing this. It's so cool. I'm going to send my pitch out to the world anyways because why the fuck not? I want to be an art teacher. I want to teach at a college level. I do enjoy streaming and stuff, and that's going to be never going to stop. But I want to teach at a college level. So if you guys go to college at a school that is hiring for art teachers, let them know that I would be very highly interested in even relocating if needed. Doesn't matter what country either. Like, I just want to teach and make that little dream come true. So I'm just throwing that out there. If any of my fans know of anything, please help me out. Let me know. Until then, I will keep on doing what I do because I love you guys. And I want to send you guys off with a nice message. So I want you guys to out there today or tomorrow, depending on how late it is for you. I want you guys to go out there and show some love to everybody in the world. Right? Send a nice message out into the world. I want you guys to love a little. I want you guys to also go outside. I want you guys to enjoy a little bit of what the world has to offer you. Now, that being outside, if it's dark right now, maybe it's dark. Let's draw a little moon. So if it's dark right now and you have nothing else to do, go outside for a second and just go stare at the sky and just the magnificence of the actual beauty of like you living in this planet. So just go out there and live a little, even if it's just like a couple minutes tonight. Then I want you guys to go and laugh a little bit before you go to bed. Have yourself a laugh. Just like go watch some memes or some funny videos. That is going to make your soul happy before you just pass out for the night. So, you'll wake up a little bit more revitalized, a little bit happier, a little bit more joyful. And of course, as always, go out there and draw a lot because that is the only way you get better with drawing and drawing and drawing and drawing. Have a wonderful night, everybody. Thank you guys for being my drawing buddies. I'll see you guys tomorrow around 11. Talk to you soon. Bye.